welcome to part 5 of my interview with Mr. Dick Boak. We're going to talk now about some of the body sizes and shapes that Martin has developed over the years and has been copied by many other guitar companies.
Every other guitar
company, yes.
So, we were just talking about tone woods and kind of the span from mahogany to rosewood and from clarity and breathiness to warmth and resonance, as it applies just to the woods that you choose for a guitar. But the other variable, or one of the other variables, and there's so many variables on the guitar. In fact, Dr. Michael Kasha, one of the scientists that contributed to the whole science of tone, felt that the human ear was incapable of discerning a change of less than 17%. So that was through his study of hearing and everything. So in order to achieve a change of 17% on the guitar, you need to change many things, not just one thing. Yeah. Well, one of the things that you can change is the shape and size of the guitar. And of course, the bigger guitars, the Dreadnought is kind of the girl we brought to the dance. How's that go? So the Dreadnought is a big guitar, and conversely, if you go back to the early 1800s, there were guitars called Terz guitars, and that's T-E-R-Z, and Terz means minor third. These guitars were tuned 3 half notes above pitch. And the reason they were is because they were small, and the scale length was quite short, like 20, 21 inches.
The strings would be very floppy if you tune it to pitch.
So so that's a good explanation that we should give to people. So imagine a guitar that has a long scale, 25 and a half inches. Put a capo at the first fret, and now the notes are half a note above pitch. In order to get them back to pitch, you have to loosen the strings.
Right.
By loosening the strings, you're making the strings floppier or perhaps more bendable. So a shorter scale guitar has looser strings when strung to the same pitch.
Yes. The easier on your fretting hand.
Easier on the fretting hand.
Pressure.
Not as projective, and not as tight.
Right.
To the touch, more bendable. Whereas a long scale guitar like an orchestra model is very taut, very responsive, very projective, but maybe not as expressive. So I think those are good.
That's an excellent explanation between the Martin short scale, which is 24.9 inches or 24 3/4, and Martin long with 25.4, which is 25 and a half.
And the parlor guitars and the small guitars of the 1800s had considerably shorter scale lengths, 24 and a half, 24 inches, 23, even Terz guitars, 21, very small instruments. When people play a small instrument, they expect it to have a small sound. But by tuning the strings up higher, like on a mandolin, it's almost the opposite. You get almost a piercing, a very surprising.
I was surprised when I picked one up and played one. Wow.
Yeah, you expect it to be whimpering and it's roaring.
It's not. It cuts through there.
So the interesting thing is that with a big guitar you can achieve a depth of tone, like a mariachi bass has a tremendous depth to it. A string bass. The bigger the instrument, the more depth you get out of it. And the small, as you shrink the guitars through all the Martin sizes, and we go from Dreadnought down to 4/0, down to 3/0, 2/0, Ot in German, O, down to size 1, size 2, size 2.5, size 3, size 3.5. You're getting smaller and smaller and smaller as the numbers get higher. The interesting thing is that as you go down in size, you lose some of the depth, the bassy, the heavy, thick, bassy boom of the instrument goes away, and what you gain is a brilliance and a clarity,
and evenness,
but also a sweetness.
Yeah.
And the other thing, so I guess as a generality, shrinking the size of a guitar will diminish the boominess of its bass response, but not necessarily diminish its intensity or its sweetness. So the other aspect of this is that the smaller sizes were traditionally offered as 12 fret guitars, which have more space above the sound hole and a much shorter neck. And the result is that there's a dynamic produced by 12 fret guitars with that extra cavity above the sound hole and the resonance that comes from a very short neck. And also the strings are coming across the saddle on a slotted headstock at almost twice the angle. So if you think of the nut as a saddle, the same way that the saddle down here, it's acting as a saddle, as a bridge, more or less, for the neck, and just sending tremendous vibrations, which we don't even think about. We take it for granted, but there's a resonance and a tone that comes from the neck resonance of the guitar. That's why
that angle is steeper.
The angle is steeper, and especially on the slotted guitars.
Heads, yeah.
So there's that element of tone, and we already talked about scale length, and so all these different variables, the type of wood, the size of the body, the scale length of the guitar, the angle across the nut, all of those things create almost an infinite number of different tone opportunities with all the different sizes and shapes and styles of Martin guitars that have been developed.
And then you can take the braces and do things with the braces. Talk about the scalloped and non-scalloped.
Yeah, or the thicknessing of the wood.
Yeah.
So scalloping allows the top to vibrate a little bit more.
You're taking away some of the support. I like to say it looks like a suspension bridge if you view it from the side.
And the whole thing about a suspension bridge is that you get tremendous strength at the peak. Yeah. And by scalloping the brace, the thought is that you have the same strength as if you had a brace that went straight across. By maintaining two peaks, you lighten up the wood and allow more vibration. So there's so many more variables. There's the types of bridge plates, the types of ribbon lining,
forward
shifting, everything.
I heard something interesting recently on scallop bracing, which I found was pretty right on the money. Non-scallop bracing you have the full range from bass to treble, so that means it includes the mids, just the way you'd have it. Okay. When you scallop the bracing, it's kind of like scooping those mids out, which therefore enhances the basses and the trebles. And that's exactly
that's a nice way to think of it.
Yeah, that's the way, and I think that's exactly what happens when you scallop a brace.
You see, a guitarist would have a sense for that more than a draftsman.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And I'm a draftsman. So
What's your guitarist do?
That's a good spot for ending the tone discussion. We can now move on to new things.
Stay tuned for part 6. Thanks, folks.